the Dressmaking Amóre Noelle dress. I originally bought this for my bridesmaids dresses that I was going to make, but then I discovered that you had to reprint the pattern for every size you wanted to make instead of having them all in one. So I decided to just use it for myself instead. I had an engagement photo shoot coming up, so I thought this would be perfect. When I was thinking of colors, I decided on purple because I don't have a purple dress and I didn't want to do white since you're kind of limited. You can't wear that to weddings in the future. So with the sweetheart neckline and the puff sleeves and the kind of longer length, I thought if I do it in purple, like a light purple, it will kind of be like Rapunzel by from Tangled inspired. It's maybe a little bit of a stretch, but this was what was kind of my inspiration for this dress. I found this really nice purple fabric on Core Fabrics. Definitely recommend it. Japan made and just really nice, light and airy. So yes, that's where I got the fabric. So at this point I've cut out my pattern pieces and assembled them and all that. Took a while, about an hour, and I am actually not going to lengthen the skirt because it's pretty long on the model, and I want this to be a summer dress, so I actually don't mind if it's a bit shorter than intended. And the sleeves are actually pretty long as well, so I'm likewise going to not lengthen those. So I am going to lengthen these about an inch. It was kind of unclear. There's not really a nape of neck to waist measurement that you can go off of for this pattern because the back, as you can see, doesn't go all the way up to your neck. So that makes it a bit trickier. You can hold this one up to your chest and decide how low it is, how low you want it to be, and where do you want the waist to hit. So you just pay attention to the seam lines. And now I've trued the dart and also trued the seam here. So now it was time for my first muslin. I like to use fabric that I just have lying around that I'm not going to use for another project. So I used this polyester twill. Here I am just trying it on. So it's not bad, it's pretty good. This is a straight size 6, I believe. But you can see those vertical wrinkles making it slope towards the back. I don't know if you can tell. I think that is from the bust being a little tight, and it's kind of pulling the fabric up a little bit. And then the waist is quite wrinkly, so I think the waist could do with being tightened in some. So those were the adjustments that I thought I wanted to make. I just Googled how to do a full bust adjustment on a princess seam top, and that's how I did it. Now here's the second muslin, and you can tell it fits a lot better than the first. If you look at it from the side, the bottom of the waist is not kind of leaning towards the back, and there's more room in the bust. So this is just a little haul that I have. I got it from Core Fabrics. I got these LDH Midnight Edition fabric shears. Okay, and these come in such a cute box. Thank you. These are actually for my mom, not me. Oh my gosh, they're so pretty. Because her fabric shears are really old and they're really small, I feel like. No, maybe not. But they're so dull. They're Henkel's. Anyway, the great thing about this is it's complimentary sharpenings, and the place they sharpen them is like very close to where we live, so it just made sense. So I'm gonna move these out of here. Wow, so pretty. Next up, there's the paper, and this is because I used their PDF printing service to get a pattern printed. I actually won't reveal what it is, and you'll have to just subscribe to see what I'm going to make with this. I'm going to make it after the current project I'm working on, so probably at the end of July, so subscribe. Okay, now we're to the good stuff. So this is what I'm going to make the Noelle dress with. It's this purple fabric. This is the main fabric. It's got a nice grain there, It's the Japanese Tencel cotton voile. Got 2.5 meters of that if you want to see. And it says to machine wash in warm water and then tumble dry on hot. That's great. And then this is for the lining. I love this fabric they carry. I've gotten it in many colors already. This is lightweight silky cotton poplin. Got 1.5 meters of this. And I'm going to machine wash this in warm water, tumble dry on hot. So I think the same care instructions. So that's great because I can wash these together. And that I got some zippers. This one is for this dress, you'll see. This one was for this just because they didn't have a purple that really matched well. So I thought, you know, this one's fairly inoffensive. Okay, I got some more needles. And this is for the other dress. More of that silky cotton poplin. And I also just got some thread. So this is the fabric all washed, and now I'm going to iron it. It always smells so good when you do this step. So gorgeous. Then I laid it out. It got wrinkly really quickly. I promise I did iron it beforehand, but I started to lay out my patterns. Now this piece is too wide for my fabric, so I'm just going to make that line come in a little bit. And then same with the sleeve pattern, I just made it a little less wide. So then I am pinning my pattern pieces onto the fabric. And I'm tracing with a tracing wheel that new line in case I want to, you know, make this pattern again. I want to preserve the original. So then I take my new fabric shears and I'm cutting out with them. And for the dart, I'm not cutting the fabric here. Those are paper scissors. I'm cutting the paper, one leg of the paper, like the pattern marking, and I'm folding it over. I heard about this on Love to Sew podcast, and then you can open it up and easily mark it with chalk. This is what I had left over after cutting out all the pieces. And then I'm just doing the same with the lining fabric. So spreading it out and cutting it out. For this skirt piece though, I am going to lengthen it because my outer fabric is very transparent. So I'm lengthening it about 7 inches, I think. And then I'm just tracing that out with some chalk. And here are all my pieces cut out so you can see the color difference. My pattern pieces here, let me show you where I'm going to put the interfacing. So I'm going to put it, this is side front, I'm going to put it up here. Here is the center front. So I'm going to put it here. On the back, then I'm going to do here and here. It's not super clear. You kind of have to go down to this picture over here where you get a clearer view of what's going on with the interface. So I've cut some strips using the rotary cutter and the Omnigrid there, and here they are. And now I'm just going to apply them onto the main fabric. So what I'm doing here, I'm using silk organza, and I'm trying to kind of get it down and press it with a hot iron. This is the thread I'm using, 442 by Gutermann, and I'm using the size 80 organ needles. And just note that this pattern is a 1/2 inch seam allowance, not a 1.5 or 5/8 of an inch. So just make sure you test out what works with your machine. For me, to get the right size, I just put the fabric between where the 10 and 15 is. So I've sewn all the darts, but I sewed them all from the point to the bottom because that's how she did it in the video. And I just feel like it's harder for me to be accurate doing it like that. I think I'm just someone who prefers to start from the bottom of the dart and sew off. I find starting it kind of hard when you do it this way. And then I decided to start on the construction of the bodice with the main fabric, which is very thin, as you can see. So I just used lots of pins. I wish, and I'm watching Carrie Dayton, love her videos. I wish I had loosened my tension a little bit. I think it would have helped those seams lie super flat. It's something I always forget to do because you don't notice it on straight seams, but on princess seams, it's very obvious. So here, this is before ironing. After ironing, it looks pretty good, but this is the lining fabric, which is thicker. On the main fabric, really the tension kind of shows. So that's my bad. Maybe I'll learn next time. So I put it on my dress form to see how it would look because I was experimenting with using really thin outer lap fabric and a thicker lining. The only real issue is that like certain seams pucker a little bit and that the interfacing shows through. So keep that in mind if you're going to try it. Here I am just putting the fronts and backs of the bodice, the main fabric bodice together. The side seams, it does not mention in the instructions, but they are sewn with a 3/4 of an inch seam allowance as indicated on the actual pattern piece. So write that down before you sew it because you almost definitely will forget. I am very impressed by myself that I didn't, but that's only because I wrote it down. Here are the fully assembled lining and main fabric bodices. So it says to stay stitched the back and front. I assume this means here, obviously, as they show in the picture, and I think it also means across here. So you're going to do that at 1 centimeter. And it doesn't say. I'm going to do it on both the main fabric and the lining if you're curious, because you don't want either stretching out. Once they're stay stitched, you can put them together, so right sides together, and sew them along the edges. Now at the front V in the sweetheart neckline, that is super important and you should be really careful and mark where your center point should be because otherwise your whole sweetheart neckline will be not matching and it will really bother you. So take the time, find out where the true center is and mark it so you know where to pivot your needle. Afterwards, then you just understitch, which I'm doing here if my camera will focus. There we go. And I'm just pulling apart the fabrics with my fingers and you get a nice finish like this. So after attaching them, you can see the lining has given the main fabric more body, which is nice, and it has some structure to it. Then I'm just going to baste these armholes closed so that when I attach the sleeves, it's less fiddly. To make the sleeves, you first just put the side seams together and sew those up. I use French seams. And you're left with 2 big tubes like this. The shaping comes from the elastic. So first we're going to hem them and then we'll put the elastics in. For the hem, I do 1/4 of an inch twice, I think, or whatever the pattern says. I use my iron and this fabric was so nice. It does wrinkle really easily, but the flip side of that is that it presses really well. So I don't even really need pins for this. So the next step of this hem, it actually gives you a range from 1/2 inch to 1 inch, how much you should flip up. And it depends on your elastic. So find the elastic you're using, tuck it into the channel, and you want to leave enough, fold it and leave enough for the stitching. The stitching is not going to be right on the edge here. It's going to be a little in. So for me, I probably could do 1/2 inch, but I might be a little tight and I might accidentally make the channel too small. So I think 5/8 of an inch is better for me. For reference, in the picture on the instructions, they did 2 centimeters, but. So my elastic is about 3/8 of an inch wide. Then you just sew close to the edge. Like I said, this is the elastic casing, not the hem. And you do that for the whole way. For the actual length of the elastic, you can use the guide measurement they use, but I've always just find it best to tailor it to yourself and see what tightness you actually like. I was also using recycled elastic that was like really not that stretchy, so that affected how long I wanted it as well. Since I'm tall, I decided to lengthen the shoulder elastic by how much? 2 inches? Yeah, 2 inches. But I ended up having to just shorten it a lot. So I would just recommend doing what it says and then seeing how much you need to adjust from there. So I stitched the elastic together after threading it through, and it looks like this. You get to scrunch it so that all those scrunches lay evenly. And now you've something that more resembles a sleeve. I'm gonna sew the bottom of the sleeve together and really match that seam. So there we go. And voila, nicely matching. Next up, I'm going to finish the edge of the sleeve with my faux serger stitch, since I don't have a serger. Definitely, since it's one layer of fabric and my fabric's super thin, I had to kind of test out the different tension settings, and I had to loosen the tension a lot. But it worked pretty well, so that's what it looks like. But I don't really trust that to fully keep my fabric from fraying, and I don't want those little threads everywhere, so I actually decided to fold over the fabric. In this clip, I was debating whether I could just pink the edges to keep them from fraying, but I realized that since my fabric is so transparent, you would see those zigzags. So here's me turning it over. I think that's about 1/4 of an inch for the first one, and then the second one maybe a little bit bigger than that. For threading the elastic through, put a pin on the other side and then use a safety pin on the other. So you can put it through and then secure with like a bar tack at the bottom. And there we go, there's the finished bodice on my mannequin. So now I get to focus on the skirt, which is very exciting. Big skirts are always really fun. And I'm just admiring my fabric again. I really like how you can see kind of the grain in this fabric, and I also love the shade. I think the shade looks a lot nicer on my skin tone than the lining fabric. So pinning those side seams, I'm going to do French seams. I'm also applying a bit of interfacing where the zipper will be. Here I am basting something for some reason. Oh no, I'm gathering. That's what I'm doing. So a reminder, when you're gathering, only pull either the top thread or the bobbin thread. I think most people instruct you to use the bobbin thread. Otherwise, it'll be way too tight and you won't be able to actually pull it, if that makes sense. Now, you're supposed to make these even, and upon putting it on my mannequin, I realized mine were not very even at all. But this was only a couple nights until my engagement photo shoot, so I didn't have time to redo it. Anyway, so I just accepted how it looked and moved on. On the lining, instead of gathering, you actually do little pleats. So those don't really matter that much since they're on the inside. But I used lots of pins, and then I took it over the sewing machine. And now it's all in one piece. I always love when that happens, because everything is just all together and looks really nice. Now I'm going to finish the back skirt seams with that same serger stitch. And just a note, it doesn't really mention it on the pattern piece, but the center back seam is wider than 1/2 inch. I think it might be 3/4 of an inch again. I'm not exactly sure. But anyway, so now I take my zipper and I'm going to press this open. So try and get the coils away from the fabric as much as possible when pressing the zipper. And then I'm going to mark the seam allowance, which I keep saying I think it's 3/4 of an inch, but just double check your pattern to be sure. And I followed the instructions exactly how they said to do them, which is a little different than how I normally do it. first you baste it on both sides, which I normally baste one side and then sew it. After basting one side, you kind of mark some places on the zipper. You make sure both sides are lining up, make sure your waist seam is correct, and then you can use your invisible across your foot, which mine is metal now, which is such an upgrade even though they're the same price. And you can use that to sew it. And I'm really trying to push the zipper teeth away from the needle there. And the zipper was finished really nicely. I honestly would do this method again. This is me just attaching the lining to it, so you also want to match up that waist seam. The top here was slightly confusing for me. The seam allowances there, you want to make sure they're not caught in the stitching, I believe. So that one was right, and then the one that's pinned, I think I had to redo, I think. Anyway, it just didn't make a lot of sense to me, and this is what I ended up with. So maybe don't listen to me. I had to kind of unpick it all and see what was going on. I think I like my normal way of doing the corners better than this. I eventually got it to look like this, so I think that was a big improvement. But this is honestly the top aside. The zipper itself is one of the best zippers that I've installed, I would say. Next up, if you've watched any of my videos, you know that I love the band roll method for hemming. Even if it's a easily pressable fabric, it's just so much easier, simpler. You don't have to worry about pins, you don't have to fuss with the iron for too long. It's just such a good method. So there you go. Now for the cost breakdown, the fabric was quite expensive, but I really like how sustainable it is and the business that I'm supporting. So I'm okay with it, especially since I can really feel the quality of the fabric as I'm wearing the dress. The zipper and thread, you know, a little overpriced, but I don't mind for the convenience. And the pattern is a fair price of $23. So now it's time for the reveal. This was after I took my engagement photos, and it was very humid and rainy that day, so excuse the wrinkles. Tencel does wrinkle pretty badly, but it's still a really pretty dress. I love how romantic it was for the photos, and so comfortable too. I'm realizing I need to get more footage of me in the dress because that was not very much at all. If you follow my Instagram, I posted a few pictures as well, and I even posted one picture from the engagement photos if you want to see that. So it's at elsatelier.makes on Instagram. My final thoughts on the pattern is that it was really good. My one caveat is like the top of the zipper. That didn't work well for me. Eventually it worked fine, but not my favorite method. And then a couple of places where I wish the seam allowance was more clearly stated on both the pattern piece and the instructions. And I also wish that all the pattern sizes were in one file instead of having separate files for every size. So if you would like to see any more reviews or, you know, videos of me sewing clothes, subscribe, because I have lots more on the horizon and a bunch more that I've been editing and I'm excited to post. That's all for me. Bye.